Ooh, it's that time of year again, boys, girls, and others, where people dress up in scary costumes, unless you're American, in which case you can dress as a minion or Spider-Man or whatever you want, go door to door begging for sweeties, threatening repercussions should they not get them, and praying whatever they do end up with isn't laced with razor blades. We're not all into trick-or-treating though, and some of us would rather stay at home, turn off all the lights, grab some snacks, and settle down with a nice, terrifying video game. But what do you do if you've already taken up residence with Resident Evil, are sick of Silent Hill, and have outlasted Outlast? Well, dear viewer, we've got you covered, as we've braved the catacombs of gaming history, ancient curse be damned, and unearthed some hidden gems to excite and fright in equal measure. So get your sofa cushions at the ready, because I'm the ever so creepy Peter from TripleJump, and here are 10 hidden gem horror games to spook you this Halloween. Number 10, World of Horror. We're kicking off our list with a game that spans a plethora of genres, so if you're after a light spooking this Halloween that combines RPG, adventure, and roguelike elements, then World of Horror has you covered. The game is heavily inspired by the works of H.P. Lovecraft and horror mangaka Junji Ito, and is set in the Japanese town of Shiokawa, which the player must thoroughly explore in order to cleanse it of the otherworldly creatures that have invaded, and put a stop to the impending apocalypse. In terms of gameplay, you can expect a highly varied experience. Allies, perks, spells, special actions, rituals, and attributes form World of Horror's RPG foundations, whilst procedural generation gives the game a roguelike twist and prevents it from becoming repetitive. The combat is turn-based, so players must queue up actions and attacks to help them best the horrifying creatures, many of which are inspired by Japanese manga or urban legend. At the time of writing, World of Horror is still in early access, and there's currently no indication when it will get a full release. Despite that though, the game has glowing reviews on Steam, so it's well worth checking out. Number 9, White Day, a labyrinth named school. White Day isn't a holiday we celebrate here in Britain, and if you haven't spent much time in East Asia, then you probably won't be familiar with the concept, so allow me to clue you in. White Day takes place every year on March the 14th, and is a day when people give reciprocal gifts to those who got them a Valentine's present. For most, it's a rather lovely day, but for White Day, a labyrinth-named school protagonist, Lee Hui-min, it's quite horrifying. White Day, a labyrinth-named school actually takes place the evening before White Day, when Hui-min sneaks into his new school after hours in order to prepare a surprise for his crush. Things quickly go south though, and Hui-min finds himself trapped in the school with a bunch of unfriendly supernatural entities, oh dear. Being a mere schoolboy, he lacks the necessary skills to fight his foes, and so must avoid them at all costs, all whilst using careful inventory management to ensure he has the items he needs to stay on top of his health and solve puzzles. White Day was originally released in 2001, but was remade in 2017. Although it didn't do amazingly well with critics, players were much more receptive, praising its tense atmosphere, nice-looking graphics, and interesting puzzles. White Day, more like Fright Day, yeah, got 'em. Number 8, Cold Fear. If you're the sort of person who likes your horror with a side serving of action, then you might want to check out 2005's Cold Fear, the first horror game ever published by Ubisoft. Players take on the role of Tom Hansen, a member of the United States Coast Guard, as he uncovers a mysterious parasite whilst aiding a Russian whaler in the Bering Strait. Said parasite has turned all of the whaling vessel's crew into mindless zombies, and it's up to Tom to put a stop to it before it can make its way to dry land. If players have any hope of getting Tom out alive, they're going to have to be smart. Cold Fear has no inventory system, so Tom is unable to carry any health packs, nor can he keep hold of more ammo than will fit into the clip of each weapon. Most enemies aren't that tough, but won't die unless their brain is destroyed. Cold Fear got a fairly average response from critics, who enjoyed its setting and atmosphere but criticised it for being a little derivative. It got pretty decent user reviews though, and although some would say it's a bit of a Resident Evil 4 clone, if you like Resident Evil 4, then obviously that's not necessarily a bad thing. Number 7, Made of Scare. Never before have we come across a title that lives up to its name quite so well, because oh boy or girl is made of made of scares. Christ, who writes this stuff? This 2020 Spookfest was developed by Wales Interactive and is set in the Scare Hotel in the year 1898. After receiving a distressing letter from his lover Elizabeth, protagonist Thomas Evans travels to Scare Island in order to investigate the mysterious Scare Hotel, where Elizabeth claims she is imprisoned. However, upon arrival, he quickly finds that the hotel's problems run a little deeper than lumpy mattresses and exorbitant minibar charges. The game is inspired by a number of Welsh and English folk tales, though in particular by the Welsh folklore story The Maid of Scare. Is Maid of Scare the absolute best horror game ever developed? Well, if its average review score of a very nice 69 is anything to go by, then no. But what it is a spectacularly spooky experience with great visual design and a compelling story that has the potential to chill players to their very bones. Number 6. The Cat Lady. Before we get into this one, we do want to let you know that this game does deal with themes of suicide, so if that's not for you, please do skip ahead to the timestamp on screen. If you're in the market for a deeply disturbing game this Halloween season, then you should take a look at 2012's The Cat Lady, the psychological horror graphic adventure from Harvester Games, and the second in the Devil Came Through Here trilogy. The Cat Lady begins by introducing players to Susan Ashworth, a middle-aged woman suffering from chronic depression. Susan has no family or friends to speak of, and the only company she has comes from the stray cats she's able to summon to her flat by playing her piano. Desperate and completely without hope, Susan decides to take her own life. But rather than dying, she ends up on a mysterious plane where she encounters the Queen of Maggots, who tasks her with ridding the world of 5 parasites. The Cat Lady is not necessarily a game that will terrify you, but it is one that spins a highly engaging tale that will leave you feeling incredibly uneasy. Oh, and whilst we're on the subject of the Devil Came Through Here games, number 5, Downfall. Being totally transparent, whilst doing our research for this list, we failed to notice that The Cat Lady and Downfall were part of the same series. The trilogy is tied together in a similar way to the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy, i.e. they share themes and appeal to the same audience from one entry to the next, but have distinct characters and narratives. So we're happy to recommend both, knowing you'll get different experiences from the two games. Downfall was originally released in 2009 and was later remade in 2016. Like The Cat Lady, both versions of Downfall are story-driven horror titles. They tell the story of Joe and Ivy, a married couple who escape to the Quiet Haven Hotel in order to try and save their marriage. However, things soon start to go wrong, and Ivy disappears, leaving Joe alone to solve the mystery, all whilst dealing with his own fracturing psyche. The game is quite short, taking most players just 4 hours or so to complete, but it packs a huge amount of atmosphere and tension into its runtime. Like The Cat Lady, Downfall won't keep you awake at night wondering what monsters are hiding under your bed, but instead it will keep you awake at night wondering what monsters might be hiding inside of you. Sweet dreams. Number 4. Murder House. The period between 1978 and 1984 is considered by many to be the golden age of slasher movies. And if you look through some of the releases in that time, it's easy to see why. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Black Christmas, Halloween, Friday the 13th, and A Nightmare on Elm Street were all released in that short 6-year window, delighting spook fans the world over. There's really no wonder then that so many video games have tried to recapture the spirit of slasher movies of the past, and one that does it quite brilliantly is 2020's Murder House, a game that is in no way affiliated with American Horror Story, but that is fantastic nonetheless. Murder House follows a camera crew as they enter the abandoned home of a serial killer, the Easter Ripper, whom the public have assumed to be dead. You know what happens when you assume things though, right? Yes, you get murdered in a horribly brutal way. The game uses old-school gameplay elements, such as fixed camera angles and tank controls, along with outdated graphics in order to give players the classic horror video game experience. The result is a fantastically creepy title that comes with a hefty side serving of nostalgia. Number 3. Unforgiving, a Northern Hymn. When we first heard about Unforgiving, a Northern Hymn, we thought, oh, finally, a game about scoffing bread cakes and working down mines. Alas, the game is not about the trials and tribulations of a hard-working Yorkshireman, but is in fact a survival horror title set in Sweden that borrows heavily from Swedish folklore and Norse mythology. The game begins with protagonist Lynn, awakening tied up in the back of a car. The driver is her brother, Lucas, and after a brief altercation, the car crashes and the pair find themselves lost in the woods, though no prizes for guessing that they're not alone. Gameplay-wise, Unforgiving focuses on exploration, and so players must traverse the open world in order to uncover all of the horrors contained within. Rather than following the same path each time though, the AI does what it wants, which not only gives players a different experience each time they play, but also adds to that spook factor. If you're looking for a short horror game to play this Halloween, then Unforgiving might just be the one for you. It may only run somewhere around the 3-hour mark, but it packs a huge amount of atmosphere, tension, and story into its diminutive runtime. Number 2. The Beast Inside. If, dear viewer, you live out in the big city trademarked, then it's likely that at one point or other you've dreamed of sacking the whole thing off and moving out to the countryside. If that is the sort of thing you could see yourself doing, then it might be best to avoid The Beast Inside, the 2019 survival horror title from Illusion Ray Studio. The game is set in 1979 and focuses its attention on Adam, a CIA cryptanalyst, as he and his wife move out to the countryside so he can continue his work in peace and quiet, and maybe alter the course of the Cold War. All of that nuclear willy waving is the least of his worries though, as he unwittingly unleashes a nightmare upon himself and his wife after opening the diary of a man from the 19th century. Come on guys, the first rule of moving somewhere isolated is don't open the damn spooky diary. God, I'm not trying to victim blame, but these people really bring things on themselves. Now, admittedly, The Beast Inside does suffer somewhat from a lack of polish, but don't let that put you off, because if you're able to look beyond its flaws and instead focus on its well-written narrative and engaging gameplay, you'll find a real horror gem. And number 1, Lost in Vivo. If the master of horror himself, Stephen King, has taught us anything, it's that entering a sewer rarely results in anything good. So if you're going into Lost in Vivo expecting things to be all peaches and cream, then I've got some bad news for you, my friend. Lost in Vivo tells the story of an unnamed protagonist who is suffering from severe claustrophobia. One day, whilst walking their dog in a storm, their faithful pooch falls into a storm drain, leaving them with no option but to confront their fear head-on by heading into the sewers. Lost in Vivo's presentation will likely remind players of PS1-era horror titles like Silent Hill, with its low-polygon graphics, survival horror gameplay, and eerie sound design. What it really nails, though, is the feeling of being trapped, alone in an enclosed space. And although it might be reminiscent of horror games from the 90s, players will still be haunted by an ominous unfamiliarity. So if you're looking for some deeply disturbing scares this Halloween that will cost you less than a tenner, you'd do well to check out Lost in Vivo. Oh, and the good news is that as long as you don't act like a complete psychopath, the dog will be absolutely fine. I know some of you were worried about that, but it'll be okay. Happy Halloween. That's not a very scary ending, is it?